Bring in show music, please.
Welcome to Squawk Pod. I'm CNBC producer Claire Odumodi. On today's podcast, the housing regulator going after Federal Reserve Governor Lisa Cook. Bill Pulte of the Federal Housing Finance Agency seems to have uncovered fraud at the highest levels of the central bank. He postponed a planned press conference today about the allegations, but he joined the Squawk Box team.
What she did was wrong. The fact that she hasn't come out and said, hey, these aren't my documents, or some rational explanation for this alleged crime, why is she not doing it? Doesn't make any sense.
Hundreds of workers at GE Aerospace facilities in the Midwest have been striking for a week. Their labor leader, United Auto Workers head Shawn Fain, on what's at stake.
I challenge anyone to look me in the eye and tell me that GE can't afford $4 million to eliminate healthcare premiums when they can pay $16.3 billion in dividends and buybacks.
Plus, the rest of today's news that got us squawking, from New York City's mayoral race to the White House's brand new patio. Our Eamon Javers on the tech CEOs coming to dinner.
You need to be on the good side of this White House, and you need the president to see you as somebody who is an enthusiastic supporter, or at least an enthusiastic attendee of his events.
It's Thursday, September 4th. Squawk Box has been going strong since 1995. Today's Squawk Pod begins right now.
Stand Becky by in 3, 2, 1. Cue it, please.
Good morning, everybody. Welcome to Squawk Box right here on CNBC. We're live from the NASDAQ market site in Times Square. I'm Becky Quick along with Joe Kernan and Andrew Ross Sorkin. And yeah, 30 years of Squawk Box.
Wow.
Maybe not 30 years, pictures of each of us, but...
I thought it was next week, but...
We're starting it now. It was actually August.
But it goes, it goes Thursday to Thursday maybe. Maybe it's that kind of week.
Full
It's
week.
not just a... Or we can do what we want. We'll just do it Thursday to next Friday.
Those pictures don't look that old. I think we all look, pretty much the same.
I might
pretty
know
much
it
the
was
same.
an old picture I hate with a new picture I hate.
That's the good news and the bad news. We look pretty much the same.
Oh, boy. Yeah, that's right. Anyway, welcome, everybody.
We'll take a couple of questions from the media. We have trillions of dollars coming into our country. If we didn't have tariffs, we would be a very poor nation, and we would be taken advantage of by every other nation in the world, friend and foe. We're not going to let that happen. And we have a very, very big case in the Supreme Court. I can only say this. Our country has a chance to be unbelievably rich again, but it can also be unbelievably poor again. If we don't win that case, our country is going to suffer so greatly.
What's the backup plan, sir?
But I think we're going to have a big victory.
Meantime, two big stories out of Washington want to bring you. President Trump seeking a quick ruling from the Supreme Court on the legality of his global tariffs. Separately, the president's going to be hosting 24 high-profile tech and business leaders at the White House. That's going to happen today. Eamon Javers joins us to talk about both of those big stories right now. Where do we think this case is going, and who is on the guest list?
Yeah, let's start with the fun stuff, Andrew. Good morning. President Trump is going to inaugurate his newly redesigned Rose Garden patio tonight with a glittering gathering of tech CEOs, including some of the most powerful and wealthy figures in business. One name conspicuously missing from the attendee list, though, is Tesla CEO Elon Musk, who had a falling out with the president earlier this year. A White House official confirms reports that other attendees will include Mark Zuckerberg, Tim Cook, Sundar Pichai, Bill Gates, Sam Altman, and Sergey Brin. Now, they're going to attend an AI event at the White House that's convened by the First Lady, and then take in the new Rose Garden, where Trump has replaced the traditional grass with a stone patio and tables and chairs that are reminiscent of his club at Mar-a-Lago. Now, it all comes at a moment of high stakes, as you say, for the administration and many of those companies represented after the administration and the Department of Justice filed its appeal to a judge's decision that most of the tariffs it levied this year are illegal. In a motion asking the Supreme Court to expedite consideration of the case that was obtained by NBC News last night, Solicitor General John Sauer asked the justices to fast-track consideration of the case so that oral arguments can be heard as soon as the first week of November. Now, that would require the court to decide by next week whether or not to hear the case. So some high stakes there, guys. Back over to you.
Well, I was going to say, Two things. Do we still think there's any opportunity, this whole idea about refunds, have you been focused on this refund issue? I just can't get over the idea that if, in fact, the court undoes this, how refunds would ever come and what would ever happen? Or do you imagine that there's, I assume, the possibility that he still puts some of these tariffs in place for 150 days at whatever the minimum level he can and then sort of fights it out afterwards? I mean, sort of when you go through the dominoes?
So a couple thoughts. One is, I think you can imagine that the Trump administration will do everything it can to preserve the tariffs, no matter what the ruling is, and that might include, Plan B options like, reformatting the tariffs under a different legal authority, trying to get a temporary extension, anything like that they can pull together that they think will pass legal muster, depending on how the court rules. And then, if worse comes to worse from the administration's perspective, they would have to, at some point, refund the tariffs. And that's, for some of these companies, you look at like Caterpillar, GM, Ford, it's nearly $1 billion or over $1 billion so far in tariffs that those companies have paid so far this year. So it could be a significant amount of money for some of these companies. I've asked folks at the White House and at Treasury, what the mechanism is to do that refunding. They don't have an answer for that. It's not clear to me whether that's because there is no mechanism or because they just simply aren't ready to discuss it yet, either timing-wise or sort of politically. They don't want that idea out there in the world because they don't really intend to go back on these tariffs. The president says it'll be the destruction of the United States if he loses the power to tariff. So you can tell how important this is to the administration.
Yeah, a lot riding on that. Hey, Eamon, I'd like to focus on the tech leaders being there. It's an interesting day for them to be there a day after the Google punishment was meted out, and it was a lot milder than the street had been anticipating. Google shares were up 9% yesterday. Meta shares, I think, were up a couple percent, too. And there is this question of whether the attack on big tech is over. Is this a one-off because of this judge's ruling on this? Or is this really kind of an all-clear sign? Because that's the way the market was reading it yesterday.
Yeah, I'm not sure it's an all-clear sign. Clearly, it's all clear, or at least mostly clear for Google in this particular case. But, this administration is committed to a populist worldview on antitrust that is a little different than what we've seen from previous Republican administrations. So I don't think it goes away altogether. The DOJ has said that they're reviewing their options in the Google case. So we'll see where they go next. But remember, that case was originally brought by Trump in his first administration back in 2020. So it's something that Trump is sort of ideologically committed to, and certainly so is Gail Slater over at the Department of Justice, who runs the antitrust division. And I think you'll see some more of that. The question is whether the courts have now said that they don't have an appetite for it, and therefore it's not likely to succeed. And then I think if you're a tech CEO and you're invited to the patio at the White House, the new Rose Garden, I think you have to go, right? I mean, I don't think this is anything other than a command performance for a CEO who's invited to an event like that, because of the enormous ability of this White House, or intent of this White House, to intervene in the private sector in ways that we haven't seen before, really outside of a crisis. I think you need to be on the good side of this White House, and you need the president to see you as somebody who is an enthusiastic supporter, or at least an enthusiastic attendee of his events. And so I think for them, you get this invitation and you have to cancel everything else you're doing and come to the dinner because of the enormous interventionism that we've seen from this White House into the private sector.
There were ramifications last time Elon Musk wasn't invited to the White House.
Right. Yeah, remember that? I mean,
Didn't
huge
work
mistake
out
by
so
the
well.
Biden people to have an EV event and not invite the CEO of Tesla.
Well, we know what that was all about, and we saw what Andrew has tweeted, and you're saying maybe the world would have been different if that had never happened. I think Elon genuinely had concerns about immigration, and I think he had a lot of different concerns, but that certainly did turn him against the Biden administration. I don't know if the same thing the midterms are coming up. First he says he's going to get involved in the
power of ego with powerful and wealthy
he's starting
people.
a new.
The power of ego is enormous.
He's holding
right?
back on the new party.
I know, but he definitely became more of a Republican and Democrat, Eamon, especially after the other stuff that the Democrats did to Twitter.
I think he's holding out hope with J.D. Vance, which is why he's holding off on starting his own party, like he had recommended.
And are we sure he wasn't invited, or he's just decided not to go?
Yeah, exactly.
That's an interesting question.
Right, Eamon? Do we know exactly?
He's not on the attendee.
No, I
He's not on
understand
the
that, but maybe
attendee
he was
list.
invited and he said he couldn't go, and they figured out a nice way to do it. We don't know.
We don't know. Yeah.
We don't know.
All that stuff matters. I mean, it sounds silly to be talking about who's on the invite list. You know, it sounds like your 8th grade school dance or something, but it does matter. I mean, the egos of these people are enormous, and when people get slighted with that level of power, they can lash out, and we've seen that in the past. And so, you know, how these things are framed, who gets invited, who feels like they have to go, who feels like they're left out, all of that stuff really does matter.
I felt all those things at those 8th grade dances. Felt all.
I still feel all those
You were
things.
left out, or you were always invited, Joe?
Can we not talk about it? Can we?
Still some
And
layers
it's probably
of trauma.
safe to say that we're all nerds.
Yeah.
I think we all have common feelings on this. The
Thank
four
God.
of us.
Thank God. There's a lid for every pot.
enough.
I say that a lot.
I'll take it.
Hopefully. Yeah.
Thanks, Eamon.
Eamon, by the way, can I just say it's been fun
You guys are all
having
invited
you
to
up
my
with us
party.
early in the morning. Thank you. Yay. But it's been fun having you up early with us in the mornings. We want it like every day.
Thank you. I
He's
appreciate
like, Thank you. I
He's like,
appreciate it.
thank-
I'm dying
thanks,
to be
yeah.
with you. It's
Thanks
been
for
every
that.
day.
it. And so does my alarm clock.
Thanks, Eamon. The shares of American Eagle Outfitters soaring. Take a look at this. Earnings of 45 cents per share beat estimates of 21 cents. Revenue of $1.3 billion also beating estimates. Now, gross margins were up. Comp sales fell by 1%, though, versus expectations of 2.3%. Or that should have been a 2.3% drop, I should say. Guidance for the full year came in above estimates. The company saying its partnership with Sydney Sweeney has been its best advertising campaign ever. That ad campaign faced some criticism and blowback, but it led to a lot of new customer acquisition and positive traffic across the channels. The company saying its partnership with Kansas City tight end Travis Kelce also boosted traffic, but Sydney Sweeney for the win.
I don't like the way that's written. Face some criticism. Yeah.
I thought it was a great campaign. So.
That's what I mean. Consider the source. OpenAI raising the size of its share sale by more than $4 billion. A source telling CNBC that the startup will give eligible current and former employees the opportunity to sell about $10.3 billion in stock, up from the $6 billion initially targeted. The source says the sale will be at a $500 billion valuation for OpenAI. That's in line with recent valuations or expectations.
Advisors to President Trump looking into offering New York City Mayor Eric Adams a job in the Trump administration as a way to transform this November's New York mayoral election into a face-off between former New York Governor Andrew Cuomo and Democratic Socialist Zohran Mamdani. That's according to the New York Times. It says how high-profile New York real estate executives and Cuomo allies have been talking about possibly offering Adams public or private sector jobs as an incentive to get him to leave the mayoral race. Mamdani is expected currently to be the favorite right now to win. Adams' spokesperson telling the Times the mayor has not spoken with Trump about a potential job. The article also says the talks have focused on the possibility of giving him a role in the administration to the main Republican candidate in New York City, Curtis Sliwa, as well, as a way to further cut down the field.
That's been out there for a while.
I have been surprised, to be honest with you, that one of the great, real estate mavens in New York City, a Bill Rudin or somebody, doesn't say to Eric Adams, please come be, the head of, policy and security for me, if this is what they want. That would be what you'd offer him whatever. But now, I can't believe we've been talking about this, out loud, because this is what's happened to
they're talking about
politics.
Trump advisors, not the president himself. So it's interesting to think whether he would think that or not. We've had people who have come in and suggested that Donald Trump would love to have Mamdani here because he would be such a great foil to kind of balance politics
To
off.
add to his list of foil.
But you do have president
need
who still
another
has
one?
extensive businesses here, and you wonder.
He's got plenty of target. I don't know if he needs another target. I guess it wouldn't,
Who knows? I mean, who knows at this point? But the story itself didn't suggest that it was the president who had considered
Right.
this.
Maybe the whole country would be better off. I mean, we throw New York City under the bus, so everybody under the age of 30 finally understands that there's screwed up ideas
That's what
about socialism.
One of the Winklevoss twins suggested.
I'm not kidding. Every once in a while, you need something like that just to shake out all of the total crap that kids are learning.
To me, the one thing that I can't figure out about this is if he does win, you have not seen, we've talked about it, you have not seen the National Guard here. You just haven't.
Yeah.
Talk about like what's happened in Washington and all these other places. Is there a reason for that?
Because he's a little more simpatico with Eric Adams and thinks that Eric Adams is doing a better job.
He's only done it D.C. and L.A.
Chicago too, I think.
He hasn't done it yet.
But they're talking.
But they're talking about it.
You can't do it in Chicago, theoretically.
But you also haven't seen sort of, massive, very visible ICE raids in New York City. You haven't seen a lot of the stuff that's been in other places. And I wonder whether that is, I don't want to say political, but political.
Trying to help Eric Adams, or trying to anti anybody who's anybody
maybe he
but.
agrees with Eric Adams a little more with what he's done on some of these things too.
Maybe New York's doing better than those other places. Seems to be doing better than Washington, D.C., my friend.
Cheese will be next.
Coming up next on Squawk Pod, it's day 8 of a strike at the GE Aerospace facilities in Ohio. United Auto Workers Union President Shawn Fain on why they're striking and why the union rejected an offer on the table.
When you talk about a 12% wage increase, what they're not saying is they want to increase their health insurance premiums by 18%.
Stay tuned. We'll be right back. This is Squawk Pod.
Stand Andrew by in 3, 2, 1. Cue Andrew.
You're watching Squawk Box right here on CNBC. I'm Andrew Sorkin along with Joe Kernan and Becky Quick. Got a lot of headlines for you this morning.
Folks, today is day 8 of a strike involving more than 600 United Auto Worker employees at GE Aerospace facilities in Ohio. In a statement to Squawk Box, a GE Aerospace spokesman said that the company is proud of the offer that it gave to employees and, in its words, are disappointed that the Detroit-based UAW leaders have decided to strike before our employees have had an opportunity to vote. We remain focused on serving our customers through our detailed contingency plans that ensure continued operations with the highest level of safety and quality. Joining us right now is United Auto Workers President Shawn Fain. And Shawn, in the lead up to this, we said that you have said that GE Aerospace is the epitome of everything that's wrong with this country. Do you want to explain? By the way, welcome. Thanks for being here.
Hey, thanks for having me. It's good to be here again. And look, what GE is doing is financially reckless not to settle this strike. And I'll go a little bit more into detail if you'll give me a minute. But to say that they're proud of a deal like this or their offer on the table, all of the union's proposals combined would cost about $75 million for a 5-year deal. Let's talk numbers here. GE made $17 billion in profits over the last 3 years. And in 2020, from 2022 to 2024, our deal would be less than 1% of their 2024 profits alone. And, workers, I want to be clear about this. Workers aren't asking to be millionaires. All they're asking for is their fair share of the profits that their work generates. And you talk about $17 billion in profit. Of that $17 billion, they paid out over that same time frame $16.3 billion to shareholders in dividends and buybacks. They $2.2 billion in this first quarter alone this year. And the CEO, got a 985% increase to $89 million. Now, workers want to know one thing. They want to know that they'll have a job tomorrow, and that they're able to afford health care. So over this same time frame when they've done all this, this company, with what they want to say they're proud of their offer, they want to increase the health care premiums of these workers by 18%. And the sad reality is this. It would cost $4 million, they could eliminate the health care premiums for all of these workers who work so hard to generate these massive profits. And so, I look at it this way. GE is recklessly putting this business in jeopardy. Half of GE Aerospace's business is servicing engines they've already sold. And the Erlanger facility, which is on strike, is the single point of failure in shipping all these critical parts. So I challenge anyone to look me in the eye and tell me that GE can't afford $4 million to eliminate health care premiums when they can pay $16.3 billion in dividends and buybacks, $2.2 billion this quarter alone, and then have the audacity to demand an 18% increase in premiums. And sadly, their lead negotiator, who by the way is also from Detroit, he couldn't look us in the eye and tell us that.
Hey, Shawn, let me just walk through what a company offer summary has laid out. They say that they proposed a 3-year agreement with the UAW that sets a general wage increase over the 3 years that totals 12%, a 5% increase effective in September of this year, a 4% increase September of next year, 3% after that. They also say that the two other union represented employee groups have already ratified new contracts earlier this summer, and they want to know why you haven't taken this to a vote to the union membership.
So, first off, the union members elect a bargaining committee to represent them at the bargaining table. So, it's not Detroit-based people bargaining for them. It's their own members right from the shop floor that bargain for them. We're there to help them in the process. We give them the resources they need. So that's the first thing to be clear about. And they elect these bargaining committee to represent their interests at the bargaining table. That's what they're doing. Second, I'm not really concerned about what other unions have done. This is a UAW agreement, and again, we're focused on the massive profits that our work has generated. And like I said, it's completely, when you talk about a 12% wage increase, what they're not saying is they want to increase their health insurance premiums by 18%. So in reality, everything you're getting in wage increases is going to be eliminated by increases in health care. So they're taking away on the other end. They're not talking about that.
What is the dollar breakdown? If it's a 12% increase over 3 years, what does that mean for the average salary? If it's an 18% increase in health care premiums, what does that work out to on a dollar basis on average?
As we said, when you look at, let's just talk numbers. Let's be real simple about this.
Yeah.
For a corporation,
let's not talk percentages. Let's talk numbers, actual numbers.
Yeah, it is numbers, and it is actual numbers. But $17 billion in profit, $16.3 billion paid out. Now think about this. So let's say everything that we're asking for on the everything on the table is $75 million. This company paid $2.2 billion in the first quarter alone in dividend or in buybacks. So they could have paid out $1,925 million to shareholders still, and they could have settled this contract. And the sad reality is what they've lost in the 8 days they've been on strike, the second day on strike basically could have paid for the entire cost of what we're asking for. So it's everything they're doing is financially reckless right now, in my opinion.
So it sounds like you consider this location a choke point that you can really shut things down for GE Aerospace if the strike continues here?
It's already affecting their business. It's affected their business, as I said, a lot more than what it would have costed just to settle and still keep making these massive profits. So it's like I said, it's financially reckless on the part of the company. And to sit there and look these workers in the face and tell them and basically sneer at them and say, we have nothing. It's sad to me. And that is what's wrong. That's the epitome of why working class people in this country are fed up, because they work hard. They're not asking to be rich. They just want to be able to live a decent quality of life. All these massive profits keep being generated for these companies, and the end result is they want to ship the work somewhere else, or they want to threaten them, and they want to keep increasing the cost of living for them. It's insane.
Where do you come down on politics? You did not endorse President Donald Trump, but you have seemed to agree with him on his tariff policies.
Did you endorse? You didn't endorse Biden either.
No, I don't think you endorsed either. But where do you stand right now?
I'm sorry,
yeah.
Kamala Harris.
So we did endorse Harris, but
oh, you did.
But yes, and I will say this though. Let's be clear. Look, we've said this from day one. The day I took over as president, our administration has said, when it comes to politics, we're going to call balls and strikes. Look, our mission is our mission. It's not going to change no matter who's in the White House, no matter who's in Congress, or even in local elections, state elections. But at the end of the day, we have been. The UAW has always supported and favored strategic industry-specific tariffs. And look, we've talked to both parties for years, begging anyone to do anything with tariffs, in the auto industry particularly. And I'll say this: when the Trump administration came out and said they were looking at tariffs in auto, yes, we embraced that. We've reached out. We've been meeting with them weekly. Commerce Department and U.S. Trade Ambassador Greer, Secretary Lutnick. We've had a lot of really good conversations, and we've seen a lot of the good come out of that already. In auto, we've seen good signs where GM's already announced $5 billion in investment in bringing jobs back here in America. Stellantis, unfortunately, is still dragging their feet, trying to lobby their way out. But the one thing I'll say with this administration, we're looking forward to continuing to work with them. when it comes to their review in the heavy truck industry. We have workers right now at Volvo and Mack in Pennsylvania, heavy truck making Freightliner and stuff in North Carolina. We have Deere workers and Case New Holland workers in Ag Imp who are where their work's being offshored to Mexico right now, and it's because there are no tariffs. And this administration has announced they've done an investigation under Section 232. And we look forward to continuing that and hope that there's going to be some tariffs put on there in the future.
Shawn, I have a broader question for you. It relates to tariffs. I was just talking to a CEO who got back from China who had been driven around, I think, in some BYD vehicles and other cars and said, it's amazing. He said it's night and day in terms of the quality of the vehicle, the price of the vehicle. It's a shocking situation. And clearly in other parts of the world outside of China and Europe, other places, some of these cars are really going to make inroads because they're going to be produced at remarkably lower prices than cars in the U.S. And we were talking about competition, and we were saying, 10 years from now, it's very possible the U.S. market is a very domestic market, that the kind of cars that we make here really actually won't be exported because they won't be competitive vehicles, so that Americans will ultimately be paying more for vehicles that are not as good as vehicles coming from other places. What do you think of that?
I think it's severely misguided, number one. Look, we created the auto industry in America. We make the best products in the world, and we can make anything. We can make anything better. Unfortunately, over the course of my entire work life, the last 40 years, we've seen the offshoring of a lot of that work. I mean, we made chips in America, forever. When I hear the word competition, I know that's a great buzzword, in the financial industry, because that's what they're all about. But competition to me means one thing: it means a race to the bottom. And if they're satisfied with making a car so cheap that people are starving in the process of making it, no one's going to buy those cars. Because the irony I find is all these companies that people talk about, why are they all having a meltdown when we put tariffs on selling products here in America? This is the market. This is the market everyone wants to sell in. But unfortunately, they want to go make it. They want to make people destitute in the process of making their product, and then they want to ship it back here and sell it. But there's not going to be anybody left if we continue on this path to buy any of these vehicles anywhere, no matter how cheap they are. And so our quality here in America is top notch. We can build anything in America better than anyone.
Well, Shawn, I don't disagree that we can build anything in America. The question is, can we for the price, and this goes to the cost of labor and how much we pay for labor to some degree. But that is the very interesting question, which is, are there going to be products out there that are going to be effectively superior products at materially cheaper prices, and that the American consumer is going to be locked into something else? I don't know what the right answer is. That's why I'm curious about it.
So the key word you said there was I would say the key word you said there, though, was about talking about the cost of labor. The cost of labor is literally 5% of the price of a vehicle. So the cost of labor, is not the factor in all this. But that's what people like to make it.
You're making both points there, Shawn. There's so many factors that do go into the cost that the management and the shareholders have to be stewards of the long-term viability of the company, or else we go back into those situations where we've promised so much with pensions or benefits or whatever that the actual health of the company. No, I know you're laughing, but shareholders put money up, put shareholders up. Shareholders put the money up for the company to run. They risk their capital, their hard-earned capital, to try and earn a return on this. And when you talk about it, you just sound very dismissive about whether they should be getting dividends. You almost sound like profits are something that maybe we should just break even and share everything with the worker. That's not the way it works.
Not at all. No, you're taking it to an extreme, though. Not at all, because here's the deal. Like I just said, okay, during our Big Three strike, the business world was having a meltdown. If we get these things, these companies will be back in bankruptcy. Guess what? The cost of our entire contract with General Motors was about $9 billion. You know what? Less than a month after we settled, they paid $10 billion in dividends and buybacks. And I don't begrudge. Look, I'm all for shareholders and stuff getting value, getting return on their investment. That's a good thing. But just like this GE situation, let's go back to that. They've paid out $2.2 billion in the first quarter alone. So be it. We're talking about $4 million to where these workers would not have any health care premiums. That's life-changing for hundreds of workers. And think about how much that'll do in the economy, because these workers, when they're making good wages, they're going to go back and they're going to stimulate the economy. That's what stimulates sales in this country.
Want to thank you for being with us today. We really appreciate it. The UAW's Shawn Fain.
Next on Squawk Pod, Bill Pulte, head of the Federal Housing Authority. He's been front and center in the developing story around Federal Reserve Governor Lisa Cook and the potential mortgage fraud. It's captured the attention of markets, Washington, and political veterans across the aisle.
I've never seen people support crime like this. This is insane. Alleged crime, let's call it that.
Pulte on the housing headline we can't stop talking about when we come back. You're listening to Squawk Pod. Here's Joe Kernan.
Federal Housing Finance Agency Director Bill Pulte, ready and waiting, joining us now this morning. Mr. Pulte, it's good to have you on. Thanks.
Good to see you, Joe.
So, Bill, you had a news conference scheduled for later this morning. It's postponed, but I don't know whether that matters. From what we already know, there's just a lot going on, a lot of questions, a lot of differing viewpoints. And as you know, everything nowadays is very political. And I've noted, you have noted and tweeted about the great lengths that we've seen some former Fed officials and Fed watchers have gone to minimize what we're talking about. Things like, well, mortgage applications are hard, they're complex, it's a clerical error, et cetera, et cetera. Nonetheless, though, Bill, a lot of discussion centers on the legal meaning of cause and whether it can be used to justify the firing. Here's an op-ed piece. I don't know if you saw it this morning, from a couple of Republicans, from Phil Gramm and Hensarling. And just tell me respond to this. This is what they said. There has yet to be a formal investigation. He hasn't been formally charged, much less convicted of anything. And her for-cause firing appears to be another assault on the monetary policy independence. So even Republicans it's raising an eyebrow. How do you respond to that?
Well, first, let me say this, and I'll get into your question in a second. I've never seen people support crime like this. This is insane. Alleged crime, let's call it that. What she did was wrong. The fact that she hasn't come out and said, hey, these aren't my documents, or some rational explanation for this alleged crime, why is she not doing it? It doesn't make any sense. So I think most Americans, and you see this, Joe, on Twitter and otherwise, unless you're really well connected with the Fed or part of the elite class or, frankly, a news reporter, you look at this and you say, what the hell is going on at the Fed? To get to your point around independence, I don't believe for the last 4 years that the Fed has been independent. You see that even right now. You got Lisa Cook, who's being represented by Norm Eisen. Norm Eisen is like the guy who tried to take down Trump, failed at it, but led the first impeachment. He's the lawyer for Lisa Cook. This is a raging Democrat. Then on top of it, you've got Jerome Powell, who's sitting silent. Okay,
right, Bill. I think what they're saying, it seems unusual. You're not. I don't think your primary role at what you're doing now is to seek out and find mortgage fraud.
That's completely false. That's completely false, Joe. That's completely false. My job, and I swore an oath before the Senate and otherwise, that I would root out mortgage fraud and that I would ensure that there's safety and soundness in the mortgage market. Now, let me just finish, Joe. I got to finish.
One-sided.
Joe, I got to finish.
Okay. All right,
I got to finish. In 2008, the Housing and Economic Recovery Act was passed and gave enormous authority to this position in which I sit. It didn't happen by accident. There was a housing crash. A big part of the reason that there was a housing crash was because people were buying mortgages and engaging in mortgage fraud. So I'm not going to be intimidated from pursuing mortgage fraud just because somebody has the special title of being a Fed governor. This is my job, to ensure the safety and soundness of the mortgage market. It doesn't matter whether you're a Republican or Democrat or a Fed governor or somebody who mans a convenience store. If you commit mortgage fraud, you need to be held accountable, period.
Bill, speak to this. And I think that there's two ideas that could be held at one time. One is, it is very possible that she did something wrong, if not illegal. It is also possible that people will view this as a political weaponization. Can you speak directly to how this came about in terms of going and looking at her work and looking at these mortgages? Who told you to do that? what kind of conversations you've had about that so people can understand the dynamic taking place here?
Our agency discovered it, Andrew, independent of anyone else. That's what we do day in and day out. As I said, we received a tip. We only use public documents in our referrals. We only use public documents in order to determine the fraud. And frankly, people need to stop being so lazy and say, you know what, maybe we should do some hard work and figure out how we root out mortgage fraud, because we can't have another 08 again.
But just
and I don't know why there's...
on it, this tip came from where?
Well, you have to understand, of course, as part of a federal investigation, I'm not going to explain our sources and methods, where we get tips from, who are whistleblowers. This is exactly why you have whistleblower protections. This is exactly why you don't intimidate people who are your sources, who give you information. So it would be reckless for me to do that.
No, but this goes to the political weaponization issue, because if, for example, the tip came from inside the administration, or came from even inside your agency with somebody who works for you, who decided, you know what, I looked through this and I need you to look into this, then that creates the perception issue. So again, you can have, I think you can hold both ideas in your head, but I'm trying to actually, to some degree, help you explain to the public that one component part of the political weaponization issue.
Well, I don't need you to help me explain things, Andrew. It's very clear. This lady signed these documents or she didn't. She committed mortgage fraud or she didn't. And why are we making excuses for somebody who's supposed to be, I think, the most sophisticated person, one of the most sophisticated people in the entire world? And somehow you and Steve Leisman and all these people aren't asking Powell, why are you allowing this at this prestigious institution?
Bill, I've asked that question repeatedly. I've asked, why has she not come out more publicly and vociferously defended herself if, in fact, there is a meritorious defense?
All right, go ahead.
Just real quickly, Bill. I hear you. I'm not a fan of mortgage fraud, if that's what happened here. I guess the only question that I would separate from that is she hasn't had her day in court yet. She is allegedly has done these things. It feels like she's being put in the court of public opinion. Should we let this play out in the court and have her have to defend it and either be found guilty or not guilty? Or should this already rise to the level of cause before she has a chance to defend herself against it?
Well, I would defer to the lawyers on that. All I can tell you is my job is to ensure the safety and soundness of the mortgage market. I feel very strongly that I'm doing my job. We're going to be making referrals. We make referrals almost every day. Lisa Cook happened to be one of them. Everybody happens to be interested in it. I would also say, too, that yes, she will go through the court process. She did sue the president, and that's working its way through the court process. And to the extent that she is charged, which I do believe she will be indicted, that's my opinion, I believe she will be indicted, she will have her day in court, just like any other American.
But Bill, when you postponed the news conference today, you said respect for the process. Does it have to do with establishing cause? And the reason I ask is, I mean, the president's already acted, and to actually, under the Act, the Federal Reserve Act, to constitute legal grounds for termination, you need to have already proven cause, and this has not been adjudicated. That's why I just wonder whether the cart was put before. Is it the cart before? I always get that mixed up.
No, I do believe there's very strong cause, and I defer to the president's lawyers and the DOJ on that. So I think most people, unless you live in a bubble, frankly, would look at it and say, you can't be doing this kind of stuff. The average American, I mean, you see it in your Twitter replies. People are stunned that this is even an issue, frankly.
But is that why you postponed the news conference to let things play out, or
I don't want to say why I necessarily did, but I would just say to you that, look, the DOJ has said that they are investigating this. I have great respect for Pam Bondi. I'm very appreciative of Pam and what she's doing with mortgage fraud and making this a priority. So the totality of things, I'm just going to let the process play itself out.
But Bill, in the same way that I think you believe that she should publicly declare herself one way or the other about what took place, I think the public is asking the question, how did this come about? It goes to this tip question. And I'm curious why you don't want to take off the table, for example, just the idea of where the tip came from, and without disclosing who it is, but to be able to say it didn't come from somebody inside the administration, it didn't come from somebody inside of your own department, for example. It came from a completely, third party, if that's the case. Can you speak to that?
Again, I think we're worried about the wrong thing. There's an alleged crime here. Why aren't we talking about the crime? Why are we blaming the investigators? I mean, if I get alerted to an alleged crime, Andrew, I have a responsibility to report it. Lisa Cook is no different. It's the same thing with, all types of people, and without getting into specific individuals, who don't have lawyers like Norm Eisen or going out and trying to make this political. There are a lot of other people that have been criminally referred, and they don't have this type of benefit being given to them, which is, maybe it's a clerical error and maybe it's this. Did you sign these documents or did you not? Do we hold people at the Federal Reserve to a high standard or not? Public officials shouldn't be exempt from scrutiny.
Speaking of that, Ken Paxton, Texas Attorney General, running for U.S. Senate, there's at least, it looks like, 3 examples, working examples right now of what could be described as alleged mortgage fraud. Is that something you're looking at?
As I said, unless it's something that's either been made public by lawyers like Norm Eisen or in criminal referrals, I'm not going to comment on any specific situation. If things are made public, then or if we decide to make them public, then I will talk about it, but I'm not going to engage in any specific individuals.
If you made this public?
That's false. First of all, that's another example of Abby Lowell and Norm Eisen politicizing this whole thing. They said that the president tweeted about my tweet. It's nonsense. There was a Bloomberg article about the referral that was out there. Okay, so this is all politicization. I am a private sector guy. I came into a government role. I promised to uphold the mortgage market. It's very personal to me. I saw Pulte Homes almost go into bankruptcy in 2008, and that's what I view my job as doing every day. And to your other point, it doesn't matter whether you're Republican or Democrat. We will look at everything, and we are looking at Republicans, Democrats, you name it. If you commit mortgage fraud in this country, and with the resources that we have, we're trying to do as good of a job as we can.
Yeah, we'll be waiting for this. I guess, Bill, and given what we saw in the prior administration, and I'm not saying 2 wrongs make a right, but certainly we saw the president talk about the overrun in costs for the new Fed building. We know what his comments are about Jay Powell. So we've had all these precedents for things, going after the Fed, trying, because the president wants lower interest rates,
did she sign the mortgage documents?
And it just when this came about afterwards, you can see how people would connect the dots to make it look like, the Fed or Lisa Cook is just being targeted as part of the continuing.
Being targeted is going after the president and changing the statute of limitations and doing what they did in New York.
Oh, no, I agree.
This is within the statute of limit. Hold on. This is within this. You guys, you keep talking over me. Just give me 1 second.
Okay.
The situation here is within the statute of limitations. I am an independent regulator responsible for mortgages. I believe there was mortgage fraud. I have a duty to report it. I mean, Andrew and Joe, would you want me as the mortgage regulator to see mortgage fraud from one of the most sophisticated economists in the entire world who's responsible for managing banks and monetary policy and not report that?
Right. I'm not suggesting you shouldn't report it. I just think there's a question mark in the public about how all of this came about, as well as the merits itself, obviously, of why she hasn't defended herself. And it's a question we continue to ask. I have a slightly different question.
She hasn't, and Jay Powell hasn't come out either. It's bizarre.
Well, that's where I was
really
going to go
bizarre.
next, which is, what is your view of Jay Powell in this situation? He obviously didn't fire her on his own. He is, interestingly, Lisa Cook has now sued not just the president, but interestingly, Jay Powell personally and the Fed board.
I don't know, but I'll tell you, I think by the day he's creating cause. Whether the president does something about that or not, I don't know. But I'll tell you this:
the president should fire him for cause for.
I would just say to you that it is very abnormal that you have this type of conduct of a sitting governor. They still have her on the website. As far as I'm concerned, she still thinks that she's employed. There is a sitting order from the president of the United States who has the authority to do this. And I don't know why Jay Powell would do it. I thought he was I've always thought he's a smart guy.
Well,
it doesn't make sense to me.
But he's being sued and is probably waiting to see how this.
Come on, we all know what's
on this.
We all know what's going on. I mean, we all know what's going on with Jay Powell.
What is going on with Jay Powell? Just so because I don't think
Jay Powell doesn't like our president. He went and he lowered rates. We're getting into policy stuff now, and I like to keep the legality different from policy. But look, to say this isn't politicized and that this isn't an independent Fed, look at what he did the last many years. With Biden right before the election. And now you have low inflation and he's not cutting rates. And then he gets a lady who's alleged of credible mortgage fraud. And he doesn't even say, hold on. And he doesn't even say, this is not, if this is conduct is there. He doesn't even announce an investigation. It's odd. It's very odd.
All right, we're going to leave it there and hope you come back because it's fascinating. We have great discussion.
That's our podcast for today. Thanks for listening. Squawk Box is hosted by Joe Kernan, Becky Quick, and Andrew Ross Sorkin. Tune in weekday mornings on CNBC at 6 a.m. Eastern. Get the smartest takes and analysis from our TV show right into your ears by following Squawk Pod wherever you get your podcasts. Have a lovely day, and we'll meet you back here tomorrow.
We are clear. Thanks, guys.